Welcome back, everybody. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, here to talk to you today about the latest news from Ukraine. Give a quick little shout out where you're all coming from. I will start TikTok momentarily, adjusting my belt as we speak. Oh boy. Oops, sorry. Sasha's sleeping next to me on the chair. Very nice. All right, I will start the TikTokers here. One moment. There we go. Manage video. Boom. Boom. All righty. Oh, all right. How's everybody doing? It is, what is it, Thursday, December 8th already? Jeez. Or as, who was it? Sean Spicer said, a day after the anniversary of D-Day. Sean Spicer put out a big, like, we must never forget the day that will live in infamy. D-Day anniversary, December 7th. D-Day anniversary is not December 7th, it's June 6th. But oh well. Thank you, Sigsar, for the hat. Hey, everybody. TikTokers are roving in. Hey, guys. Up Ginger, as always. Thank you, Ginger. Hammond, Indiana. Used to go when I was a kid. My uncle lived there. What was it? Hammond, Indiana, or whatever that song was from the old musical, whatever it was. Was that from I don't even remember what that was from. Any case, hey guys. So yeah, we're about to start. I'm going to wait a minute here for TikTok to hit its critical mass as it always does. And what the heck, I'll start now. So I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine, and then we do question and answer for the second half of the show. Take your guys' questions, also your comments, your impressions on the news. I will start today by telling the TikTokers, you guys know you can submit questions via the Q&A link in my profile on TikTok. The rest of you can use the links at the bottom of the page, the comment box. As always, I am independent media. I appreciate the support you guys give me. So if you can help out with gifts on TikTok, gifts with the super chats, the super stickers, that helps a lot because I am doing this for free and I am doing this full time. So I'd like to keep doing it. Let's get rolling. So the big news today is that Brittany Griner was released. I'll tell you sort of where it stands. My news, allergies. My allergies kick in as soon as I start the show. I'm allergic to you guys. I'll tell you kind of where things stand with Brittany and then maybe my opinion, because I'm very divided on this story, to be honest. I'm glad for her, but I'm very divided on the story. So Brittany Griner, you may recall, American female basketball star, went over to Russia to play for one of the Russian teams. I believe it was the team in St. Petersburg. Typically, these American basketball players go during the off season, their off season at home, and they can make anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million. I mean, a huge amount of money. For you guys, that would be the equivalent of, you Europeans, is the equivalent of €1 million. So a lot of money these guys can make. Brittany went over. She was arriving right before the invasion. I think it was approximately February 14th or so. She was arriving in Moscow. The war, the actual invasion, was February 24th of Ukraine. And what happens? The Russians arrest her. They say that they found a small vial of a vaping vial, and they had it tested, and the oil inside was some kind of cannabis derivative. I forget what it was, but something marijuana related. Okay. Throw her in jail, long trial, long appeal. Bottom line is they give her 9.5 years in a penal colony. Mind you, in Russia, a penal colony is a horrific place to be sent. We are talking hard labor. One of the reports that I was reading on what a Russian penal colony is actually like is getting up at 7 a.m. and working hard labor from 7 a.m. until midnight. I mean, not without even a bathroom break. I mean, horrific the conditions. So the Biden administration negotiating for months now. Finally, the Russians agree to, thank you, Anthony, for that. The Russians agree to let her go in exchange for this man, forgetting his name. I forgot if he's Victor Buk or what, but an arms merchant, a Russian arms merchant called the Merchant of Death. Very bad man. I mean, Preet Bharara, interestingly enough, a lot of the liberals in America, the people on the left, know who Preet Bharara is. He's on CNN a lot and everywhere. Bharara himself prosecuted this guy, the Russian arms merchant, and said, it is Victor Bout. Okay, thank you. And said that it doesn't get any worse than this guy. Now, the issue here, final point. Paul Whelan. Paul Whelan is the other American who is in prison in Russia. He has been in prison since 2018. The Russians accuse him of spying. Who knows? Maybe he was spying, maybe he wasn't. Who knows? The Biden administration tried to include him in this prisoner swap, and the Russians refused. Basically, the Russians, I think they can get even more from Whelan, so why include him, right? As far as where this all stands, I am very divided on this. I started the day happy for Brittany and her family because I'm sorry, but a Russian hard labor camp and being a woman, black and gay in a country that is supremely racist, supremely homophobic, would not have been a very good thing for her. I am less than thrilled if, in fact, she did bring this cartridge into Russia. I will say that, it is possible. She says she brought it by mistake. It's possible. I'm not sure I believe her. And I'm not real thrilled about that. Let's just put it that way. Okay. If she brought drugs legally into Russia, then I have zero sympathy for her, because all of us are familiar. I mean, literally all of you guys watching from abroad as well. All of us are familiar. Thank you, Dan, for that. All of us are familiar with what happens to people who fly internationally with drugs, especially when they go to scary countries, right? Places like Russia, places like Saudi Arabia, places like Turkey. We know what happens. You're lucky if they don't kill you, right? So we don't know. I mean, we really don't know. And the fact that she confessed, I've said this before, I will not believe her confession until she confesses on American soil. She was a prisoner in Russia. This is a dictatorship. She would say anything, and she should say anything to get released. The Russians absolutely would make her confess before they would release her. So I'm not going to really hold that as being a confession. But I will say, as I said, if she knowingly brought drugs in, I don't care if it's marijuana, hashish, or what it was, I'm not very happy about it. Second of all, and this is the bigger problem, there are a lot of sports people who went, check this, American sports stars, basketball stars and others, who after Brittany was arrested and after the Russians did their show trial of Brittany, I read an article a couple months ago, a ton of American, not just women, men too, flew to Russia to get their sweetheart deals playing for the Russian teams. These guys were getting up to $1 million. I read one NBA, National Basketball Association, the really big, the big American Basketball Association, men's teams. He flew over to play. These guys, after what happened to Brittany, zero sympathy. I swear to God, if any of them get picked up by the Russians, they can learn Russian and move in with Edward Snowden. Brittany didn't know. I will say this, didn't know. Brittany did not know that Russia was on a streak to arrest Americans. Now we know. And any of these other guys who went back just for the money, forget it. But as I said, on Brittany, I'm very divided. I'd be, thank you, Al, for that. I think when we get to the question and answer period, I will be, actually, let me tell you right now, on TikTok especially, go to the Q&A link in my profile, enter your opinion of where you think things stand on the Brittany thing. Are you glad? Are you sad? Are you worried? Because I'd be curious once we get to the Q&A period, just to maybe read through some of those, because I think it'd be interesting. As I said, I'm very divided. The final point is, and it's not wrong, the final point is you've got to be very careful when reaching these kind of deals, because it absolutely does set a precedent for the Russians to kidnap more Americans. They're going to, just so they can get more of their criminals released. Having said that, that doesn't mean we don't do it. I am not convinced that we don't do it just because the Russians are going to use it against us in the future. But, I'm divided. So there you go. Actually, I was going to tell you really quick. This was it. Now, to take this back to Ukraine. Okay, let's take the Brittany story back to Ukraine here. Thank you, Arabella, for that. Nick Payton Walsh, who's a very good CNN correspondent, international, and he wrote a piece for CNN today talking about his take on the Brittany Griner deal and how he actually thought there were two aspects of it. I'll say positive for the West or whatever. Listen to this. He says the fact that Moscow and Washington are able to do business even as Russian bombs kill innocent Ukrainian civilians, and the U.S. provides arms to Ukraine that are killing Russian soldiers, and that nuclear powers can work on a thorny issue while bullets are flying. This is a good thing for everyone on the planet. It means some cool heads prevail and basic interests win out. Now, this is a really good point. I mean, and this is something that I talked about before with also nuclear arms deals. That thank you, Louis, for that. That very generous of you, and that is one of my favorites. The Galaxy, all the star stuff is fabulous. It is a good. This is a good deal. What I mean is, it is a good sign that the Russians and the Americans can get together and work out a deal, even if maybe we're not perfectly happy with the deal, but that we could get together and work something out when, frankly, our weapons are killing Russian troops, deservedly, but that's not a bad thing for the world that the two nuclear powers are able to reach a deal on something. Secondly, and this was really interesting, and this takes it directly back to Ukraine. I'm going to read here a little bit of a longer paragraph. This, as I said, is Nick Peyton Walsh, who is a CNN correspondent, international, very smart guy. Listen to this. It also shows some weakness on the side of Putin, him reaching this deal with the U.S., at a time when Putin is hawkishly flaunting nuclear rhetoric against the West. He is also agreeing to high-profile diplomatic dealing to get back a figure of outsized, complex, important to Russia's elite, the intelligence community, and national pride. So he's saying that the arms dealer, hugely important to Russian intelligence, to what was I saying? Russia's elite, Russia's intelligence community, and the national pride. He is not someone Moscow would leave behind, quote unquote. These are the very people that I just talked about, intelligence community, the elites. These are the very people Putin wants to curry favor with right now. Yes, it is a win for Putin, but one that comes at the cost of exposing Putin's weakness and Putin's need to keep the military elite he relies on content. In other words, Peyton Walsh, who, as I said, top CNN international correspondent, he thinks that this was also a sign of weakness for Putin. Putin was desperate to get this deal because he's in trouble with the maybe not in trouble. He's having issues with the elites in his own country, including the military elites and the intelligence community. And these are the folks who, in the end, can overthrow Putin. So that the fact that Putin was willing to reach this deal with the states shows that Putin himself is worried about how things are going at home. Just thought it was very interesting. Oops, I'm getting oh, that's interesting. Oop, sorry. I'm getting a little thing on my computer here. I always love when that happens there. Always get the little things from Amazon where they never quite know. Sorry. I'm checking this for mom because I'm at mom's helping her out with buying things. It always says the Amazon driver doesn't know where things are, but then like you message and the Amazon driver knows. Oh, he's coming. Secure the pets. Well, we're going to hear the pets bark. All right. So there you go with the Brittany thing. I am John Aravosis. Thanks for joining me today, folks. This is the Aravosis Report, my daily show Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine, and I go through the stories that I think are important, the top stories of the last 24 hours, and then I take your questions and your comments. You can go to the comment box, Q&A link, actually, in my TikTok profile. You can leave comments or questions there, and you can use the comment box at the bottom of the screen. Please keep the gifts coming. That's how it supports my work, so I appreciate it on TikTok and on YouTube. And I also have a Patreon set up. That's patreon.com/Aravosis. You can also find the link in my profile on TikTok. You'll see the URL, the Linktree link. Oh, thank you, JSS. You are. We have our first whale of the day. Woo, wave. Thank you, JSS. Always very kind and generous of you. But please do go check out my Patreon too. It's an easy way for you to, chip in $5 a month, price of a coffee, and support my work on a regular basis. I'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/Aravosis. There were explosions heard today in occupied Sevastopol. I'm going to pull out the handy dandy map. Get ready. Sevastopol, which is a huge Russian it's a Russian naval base in Ukrainian territory. This is the peninsula of Crimea that the Russians invaded and occupied in 2014. And then annexed, claiming it's part of Russia. It's not part of Russia. It's Ukraine. But nonetheless, the Russians claim it's theirs. Sevastopol, huge Russian naval base here, okay? And the Ukrainians have attacked it before. It looks like the Ukrainians attacked it again today. Thank you, James. That's another one of my favorites. Space is always good. Thank you for that. I keep thinking that's outer space. To me, that looks like outer space. A powerful explosion was heard over central Sevastopol in Russian-occupied Crimea. The Russians claimed nothing was damaged. I saw other reports that said, I believe that there may have been like lots of small explosions. We don't know. There was another Russian report I actually read that claimed it was a drone coming in and a Russian ship shot it out of the sky. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't believe anything the Russians say. Who knows? But clearly, the Ukrainians are continuing to hit Russian territory and continuing to try. Remember, just a few days ago, the Ukrainians, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but the Ukrainians hit 2 Russian military bases, damaging 2 Russian strategic nuclear bombers, a big deal, and killing 3 Russian troops, also a big deal. The United States has not seen evidence that Iran has transferred ballistic missiles to Russia for use against Ukraine. That's according to White House National Security spokesman John Kirby. The issue here is we were concerned that and we're still concerned that Iran and the Russians are negotiating to transfer a large number of surface-to-surface missiles to Ukraine, and these would basically be missiles that Russia would, thank you, Louis, for that, basically missiles that are on the ground, take off, and then attack ground targets. So they would be fired at factories, well, just what Russia's already doing, fired at factories, fired at electrical facilities, fired at water facilities, fired at other civilian targets, such as apartment buildings and things like that. Ukrainian state-owned weapons manufacturer. Oh, this is interesting. So just a quick little update on Ukraine's drone. Now, in addition to, thank you, El, in addition to the news that Ukraine used, and I'm going to actually, well, you know what? Let me start this first. I was just going to tell you something that's the next story anyway. Let me start this first. The thinking is how Ukraine was able to attack Russian territory at these 2 military bases in Russia. And mind you, these bases were something like 300 miles inside Russia and 450 miles inside Russia. That's a huge distance. No one thought Ukraine had the ability to hit that far in Russia, and they did the other day. The thinking now is that Ukraine used 2 domestically modified, meaning they changed it themselves, 2 Tu-141 Soviet-era surveillance drones. Now, these would be drones that Ukraine had going back 30 plus years. The Soviet Union disappeared in 1991. These were Soviet drones that Ukraine inherited because Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. So over 30-year-old drones, Ukraine modified them to be able to go a long distance to carry a military payload like a bomb in the nose and be able to cause damage. Really amazing. And apparently, at least from what we know, did it on their own. I doubt the U.S. helped. I'm always suspicious of the Brits on things like this because I could see the Brits helping Ukraine. I wish we would help, but I could see the Brits helping Ukraine on something like this. But also, Ukrainians seem to have quite ingenuity on these things, so they may have just done it themselves. What I was going to say is on Ukraine's drone, separate from we think separate, okay? Separate from this story, Ukraine has been developing its own long-range drone, okay? Now, let me give you this, the latest on this. The state-owned weapons manufacturer, oh boy, Ukroboronprom has said for months that it is working on a drone with a range of more than 600 miles, 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers, while not disclosing the details of the project. In October, the company said that they are putting the final touches on the drone. So this kind of has me wondering, too, whether this drone that was able to attack the Russians on 2 different air bases, whether it wasn't actually this new Ukrainian drone that they've been building, but at least the scuttlebutt is that it's an old Soviet drone, which makes me think, by the way, that it's the Ukrainians themselves that have leaked the information to the press saying it was an old Soviet drone. Whether that means it was, who knows? What we got here? Oh, Zaporizhia. So Zaporizhia. All right, we've talked a lot in the past about the Zaporizhia nuclear plant. You know how there's been ongoing concern about the Russians bombing in the area of a Ukrainian nuclear plant that's had to shut down repeatedly. Not just concerns about them hitting the plant, because the plant itself can probably withstand a Russian strike. Remember, these are plants that are built to withstand a 747, right? A commercial jet hitting them. The concern is that the Russian shelling in the area could take out the backup power, or excuse me, not just the backup power and the power to the plant, because the plant itself is also supplied with electricity. And it's something that I find a little weird, because like a nuclear plant creates electricity, so why is it powered with electricity? But whatever. The coolant system to the plant is electrical powered, and the Russians have repeatedly knocked out the electrical power to the coolant system. Now, what happens when a nuclear plant's coolant system goes away? You have a meltdown, right? Because the plant just overheats, it explodes, the core melts down into the earth, disaster, right? Fukushima, Japan. Or Chernobyl in Ukraine, which was the biggest nuclear accident in history back in 1986. So the concern here is the Russians keep bombing the area. Well, the latest on this, listen to this. Oh, I was going to show you where it is too. So the plant we're talking about, the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, it is a Ukrainian plant. It is occupied by the Russians. The Zaporizhia plant is, if you look here, you see the river, and you see how the river kind of goes up and then down again, right at the cusp of where it goes up on the south side of the river. That's where the Zaporizhia plant is. The Zaporizhia region is here. The capital city of Zaporizhia is here, but the plant is actually here. I think it's, I'm forgetting the name of the town. Enerhodar, I think, is the name of the town, right there. So the Russians have placed rocket launchers next to the nuclear plant. And this was a new report that came out from the Ukrainian Energy Agency that actually is responsible for the plant. The Russians have placed multiple rocket systems on the Zaporizhia nuclear plant's territory next to the spent nuclear fuel storage units. Again, really, the reason they're doing this is because they know the Ukrainians aren't stupid enough to fire back and risk blowing up the facilities associated with the plant. So the Russians are basically holding the plant hostage as a human shield to stop the Ukrainians from attacking. And it's sick. It's just sick. And I love using my t-shirt. Every time we talk about getting a new map, everybody complains about my t-shirt map. Just so you know, Anthony, I've considered it, but everyone loves the t-shirt, so we use the t-shirt. I will do a quick reset. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show, 6 p.m. Eastern, U.S., Monday to Friday. Thank you, Rigadwe. These names are always hard to pronounce. If you want to ask a question, the way we do this, for the first half of the show, I go through the news of the day, and people put fun gifts on my head. Thank you, Lorraine and Marcy. I go through the news of the day, and then the second half of the show, I take your questions and we discuss them. To submit questions right now, feel free to go to my profile on TikTok, look for the link that says Q&A for question and answer. Thank you, Sig Sauer, and enter my question there or your question there. Same thing on YouTube. You can use the comment box, or any of you, Facebook, Twitch, etc. Use the comment box and submit questions there. And do keep the gifts coming. Supports my work. So I appreciate the gifts on TikTok and on YouTube. And what was I going to say finally? Oh, and then check out my Discord. Sorry, I'm putting chapstick on. I do have a Discord set up, discord.aravosis.com. We have an online community, a lot of discussions going on. We have a number of Ukrainian items that I've been auctioning for several months now, including the coolest item, I think. We got a lot of cool stuff, military patches, but the shirt that Zelensky wears, the green shirt that Zelensky wears, the military shirt that has the combat patches and stuff. We found the manufacturer of the shirt. I've got several versions of it, and I'm auctioning that off. So very cool. So check it out, discord.aravosis.com. Again, easiest for you folks, just go to my profile, hit the Linktree link. You'll find all of my links there. All right, Russian state TV. This was actually kind of funny. You heard yesterday probably that Zelensky and the spirit of Ukraine got picked as Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Well, the Russians not happy at all. They showed a picture on Russian national television. I think this was last night, and they showed Zelensky's Time Man of the Year, Person of the Year, cover, and next to it they put the 1938 cover showing Hitler's Man of the Year cover. Now, just to give you a little more explanation, and yes, Time did pick Hitler because the Person of the Year isn't necessarily a good person or a bad person. It is the person who most influenced the world that year, who had the biggest impact on world events. Okay. It is not for good or for bad. So 1938 would have been Hitler, right? This year is Zelensky and the spirit of Ukraine overall. Well, the Russians are livid. So the Russians put up the picture of Zelensky next to the Time magazine cover of Hitler, trying to claim, well, look who else they picked, right? Thank you, PJ. What, of course, Russian TV didn't tell their audience was Vladimir Putin was a Time Man of the Year many years ago, I think 2008 or so. I'm trying to think. There were a number, Andropov, Khrushchev, I believe, maybe Brezhnev. There were, 5 or 6 maybe Russian leaders and Soviet leaders over the years who have been picked. But, this is Russia. I've always told you guys, always remember the Russian government, they lie a lot. Unfortunately, they feel that in order to get their point across and to whether it's internationally or domestically, they lie. They lie. So anyway, what do you do? Thank you. Oh, I've not seen that before. W. Reich. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, wow. That's very cool. I've never seen that one before. The observatory. Wow. Oh, that was in my stuff. Thank you. I get it. That was in my I like stars and I like the universe theme. That was very good and very thoughtful. Thank you for that. I wrote in my notes, speaking of Hitler, the Ministry of, this was actually a good quote. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Oh, thank you, Laka. Or Lacha, I'm going to say for the universe there, for the galaxy. Thank you. Not the universe. I guess universe would be bigger, but I appreciate the galaxy regardless. The Slovak Minister of Foreign Affairs. Listen to this quote from, I'm assuming, this is from him. Thank you, Magic, for the December. Radislav, which is a man's name. Listen to this quote from him. What Russia is doing in Ukraine was not, is not, and will never be acceptable. To those who say that, quote, we want peace, we are in favor of negotiations, quote, we always say that we have already been through it with Hitler when someone tried to conduct those negotiations behind our backs. We know that this led to the destruction of then Czechoslovakia and the Second World War, the loss of tens of millions of people. We will never repeat this. We have learned the lessons of history and will support you until the very end. Boy, doesn't get stronger than that as far as a statement, but I was like, what's really interesting outside of Hungary is just how strong Eastern Europe has been in defending the Ukrainians, right? Up to the Baltic states. And basically it's because these countries were all occupied in some way or another by the Russians, whether it was the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was, pretty much the Russians. And they occupied Ukraine. They occupied the Baltic countries in the north, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, or Eastern Europe, Poland, Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic and Slovakia, Bulgaria, East Germany. German's not so good. But you are seeing and thank you for the target there, Yabo. Yabo, I'm calling you Yaboy. But you're seeing almost better statements than we put out, because these are folks who had to deal with the Russian occupation directly, and they know how bad the Russians can be. So they're under no illusions. Final point here. Oh, this is a final point, and then we'll do the questions. A Turkish company is going to supply Ukraine with electricity via Romania, according to, thank you, that Bonnie, for the cease thing. According to the Anadolu news agency, no idea what country that Anadolu is from, although I'm going to guess it's Anatolia, so it's probably Turkish. But Turkey supplying Ukraine with electricity via Romania and Moldova would be very cool. So there we go. Okay, pretty good timing. Thank you, Lindy. that was my half hour, and Marie as well for the gifts. Let's jump in with the Q&A. We can start with Brittany if people have Brittany comments, because I'm curious what you guys think. As I said, I'm very divided on it. I'm glad she got released. I'm not convinced she was wholly innocent going into this, but I'm glad she got released. Thank you. Who was that for evolving? But you know, I'm 50-50. Oh, actually, forgot to tell you really quick too. You can also check out, I've got a store set up at store.aravosis.com, which also has a lot of cool Ukrainian themed goods. And half the money that I make from the store, I am putting back into Ukrainian relief work that we're doing, humanitarian relief. And the other half goes to support my work because I am doing this full time, and I have been doing it full time, and I hope to be able to pay my bills someday. So I appreciate your guys' support any way you can give it. It's the name of an area in Turkey. Okay, thank you, Radoslav. Yeah, the Anna made me think of Anatolia or that kind of a thing. Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, what do you guys think of the Brittany thing, the Brittany story? I'm just curious. Are you happy? I mean, Closet Atheist is saying was not an even trade for Brittany. Should have been our Marine, not a basketball player. Now, right, Paul Whelan is a former Marine. Russia took Brittany to use her. I think that's very true. I'm glad. I'm happy. Okay. Playing both sides. Yep. Marion, my friend Marion, gay black woman, goes home on same day as same-sex marriage passed. True. True. We had major legislation in the Congress protecting same-sex marriage nationwide. So that's a big deal. Happy for her. Seeing here. I feel the same way you do. I'm not so thrilled. There are others who need rescuing. Having said that, you know, a black gay woman in a Russian prison camp, hard labor, is pretty awful. I mean, so I understand those sympathies as well. And it may be a little sexist, but you know, thank you. It's me. I appreciate the galaxy. Thank you. You know, it may be a little sexist, but it creeps me out even more that it was a woman that they were doing this to. And again, maybe that's paternalistic and everything, but it does a little bit. Griner should have never been released. I'm on the fence with her being released. Should have been both. I agree. It should have been both of them. Now, what the administration said, thank you, your boy, for that. What the administration said was the Russians refused to let Whelan go. At this point, they said, you know, it's only Brittany, and the administration figured better to get one than none of them. And hello, Rocco Sud from Romania. Yes. Actually, it should be Kalovradi at this point for you guys. You've got to be like overnight there. Ben is saying, I think any person being released from Russian captivity is good, but I just hope the Americans didn't make any concessions to the Russians over this. I mean, the concession we made clearly was releasing this guy. He's a bigger fish than she is, clearly. And it's bad. I mean, he was thrown into prison for 25 years for trying to kill Americans, among others. Big deal. Big deal. Correct. What the Russians wanted for Whelan, actually, the Russians wanted more than a spy. Remember, we talked about this. The Russians wanted some guy who is in prison, I believe, in Germany for trying to assassinate someone. And remember, the guy himself, I believe, was either a Chechen or a Georgian. Remember this story? If you guys remember who this was. And he tried to assassinate someone in Europe, I believe, probably a Russian expat, you know, and was arrested for that. This assassin. That's the guy they wanted released. So, I see Michael. Oh, good to see. Flower lady. Thank you. I always feel guilty when some of you've been so generous. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I was just seeing Michael Anderson just notified me. He is accepting the win of one of our auctions, this very cool Ukrainian police patch that I've got. And it's the real deal. I even have pictures of the cops wearing the patches and stuff. It's really cool. Anyway, just notified me on PayPal that he wants it. So that's fabulous. Michael, I will be sending it to you. I don't know if you're here tonight. They said that Paul was a spy, and Paul might have been a spy. Who knows? You know, who knows? The Russians clearly think he is. Being away for 12 years in prison, this is Rob Wall. I would think his previous networks would need to take time to rebuild. This is the Russian arms merchant has already been in jail for 12 years. He's going to go for another 25. I mean, he was going to be there for 25, but, you know, there you go. You don't see the presence on YouTube. A good question, because I am actually using, because this is, by the way, any of you who notice, I keep looking back and forth. I've got my iPad where I'm running TikTok, but I've got my laptop computer over there that I'm running YouTube, Twitch, all sorts of other stuff. So it's not doing the same feature, and the gifts aren't as cool. They're still welcome, and they're very much appreciated on YouTube. But on TikTok, it's crazy stuff that flies across the screen. That's why you guys don't see it. So I apologize for that. Sorry. All right, let me look for the other questions here today. I know there's been, I agree with you. I feel bad for Whalen, and Whalen himself, the other American who's still stuck in Russia, did an interview with CNN, and he was really upset. I mean, he's really not happy. He's like, I've got my bet. I want to go home. So I feel sorry for the guy, but what do you do? All right, let me see here. Beep, 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 beep. Just look and see. TikTok. Oh, thank you, Dark Phoenix. Oh, that's very cool. We've only gotten the hot air. I don't think I've gotten the hot air. Well, I vaguely remember the hot air balloon. That's cool. Thank you. So let me pull up questions on TikTok really quick. Here we go. So, and maybe some Brittany stuff too. Can you get shirts with the Ghost of Kiev logo? We could. That would have to be a request for the wonderful Wendy. We'd have to think of what they would look like, but I like the concept. The Ghost of Kiev, remember, just for folks to remind you all, that was the, thank you, ya boy. Oh, ya boy and Bonnie. Thank you, guys. The Ghost of Kiev was well, if you ask my friend Vlad in Ukraine, totally real. The Ukrainians say this guy existed. On the outside, people wonder whether it was kind of a myth. Thank you, Uncle Crazy. Whether it was kind of a myth. And Daniel, the Ghost of Kiev, allegedly, was a Ukrainian fighter pilot who shot down a lot of Russians in the first month or two of the war. He then, an ace fighter pilot. Maybe a month in or so, you stopped hearing about him, and there was concern, maybe he died. And then finally, I think like a month or two later, the Ukrainians came out and said he was shot down and killed, I believe. The thing is, I've said all along, if the Ghost of Kiev was a mythical story made up by the Ukrainians, thank you, Inspired Woman. Just Cabal. That's in honor of the gay thing today. I'll claim it for my people. If the Ghost of Kiev were made up, they wouldn't have killed him after a month, right? You'd keep him going. Why would you kill him after a month? But the guy, he didn't just get killed after a month. He disappeared after a month. I say it's about a month or so. It was 4 to 6 weeks, I want to say, where you just stopped hearing about him at all. And it wasn't until months later that the Ukrainians said he died. To me, that makes it sound like the story's real, because a fake story, you wouldn't kill him. You'd keep him. You'd have son of the Ghost of Kiev and the brother of the, right? You would just keep, it's like the Star Wars franchise or the Harry Potter franchise. Just keep cranking them out. So it always made me wonder. That's interesting. Boxer Boy is saying he read that it was a woman was the Ghost of Kiev. Could have been. Thank you, Michael, for that, for the galaxy. It could have been. It could have been a woman. I mean, because the Ukrainians, about 20% of the Ukrainian military is female, and the Ukrainians are very, very welcoming in that regard versus a lot of, certainly the Russians are not that way. Ben is saying, not related to Brittany, but do you think we should be concerned about Russia saying the risk of nuclear war is rising? I know the Russians lie, and it's probably a scare tactic to freak the West out. It is a lie and a scare tactic to freak the West out. Now, what Ben is referring to, which is interesting, is that this is a comment Putin made yesterday, okay? He made the comment and said, oh, the risk of nuclear war is growing, but then he gave a long talk where he said, we're not going to use our nuclear weapons. Anybody who thinks that, we're not crazy, we would only use them in response, meaning like if you nuked us first. Thank you, Lindy, for that. He gave a lot of statements downplaying the nuclear risk. So the irony was he started by saying, oh, the risk has increased. And the rest of his speech was literally knocking it down. Chancellor Scholz of Germany, the German leader, came out today and said that he believes the risk has now diminished, that the threat of a nuclear confrontation. Thank you, it's me, for the December thingy, that he thinks the risk of confrontation has gone down. I think that's true too. Now, mind you, they lie, but nonetheless, actually, I'll put it this way too. The Brittany thing happening at the same time, very interesting. For some reason, the Russians wanted to sort of calm things down a little. Thank you, El, for that. Elise, my friend, what do we have here? Elise is putting up a question. Video today of Putin with a, oh my God, yes, he's drunk. Video today of Putin with a glass of wine declaring, yes, we're bombing civilian infrastructure, but Ukraine bombed the Kerch Bridge first. That is exactly what he said. Will be useful when it's time to prosecute war crimes. Yes. And what's interesting, if you can find the video, he's drunk off his butt in this video. I mean, literally, Putin's talking and he's going like this. And I mean, I've studied Russian. I don't speak Russian. Marion speaks Russian. Marion, you ought to watch the video. Putin is drunk off his butt in this video. But yes, he pretty much says, yeah, we're going after all the civilian infrastructure because they blew up my bridge. That's a really good point, Elise. Actually, I don't, Marion, what do you think? That's a really interesting point that now mind you, I mean, I guess the supposition would always be there that, of course, Putin has approved all of these civilian attacks. But the fact that he's actually admitting it might actually make it. That's a really good question on the war crimes thing. Thank you. Who was that? The ice cream. Was that Nitro for the ice cream cones and Sederman? Oh, and Nitro. That again for the money and the ice cream cone. Thank you both of you guys for that, or gals. That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That's very interesting. Huh. All right. Let me pull up another TikTok question. Hang on here, guys. What else we got here? Ghost of Kiev, though. I do want to look into that. Oh, God. Oh, God. I'm not even up on what's going on there. The continuing resolution deadline issue with regards to shutting down the government and all of that. I actually haven't even been paying enough attention. I've got to, because if that's coming up in 8 days. But I have nothing to tell you right now. I mean, the Republicans have been talking about trying to cut Social Security and everything, but that's for another day. Is it anything other than coincidence? Thank you, your boy. Is it anything other than coincidence that Iran and Russia are having major uprisings? I don't think Russia's having a major uprising, though. That's the only thing. Iran is, Russia isn't. Russia had an uprising at the beginning, right? And then it got tamped down. Now, the Russian people don't seem to be terribly happy about what's going on with the war. That's true. But I wouldn't call what's happening there an uprising. Not with them. They're pretty passive at the moment. They're just not happy, because they feel like the war isn't going anywhere. They're worried about another call-up, another draft coming. Putin had to come out and literally deny that he was planning on having a second call-up, a second mobilization, an even wider draft in February. Everyone thinks he's a liar. I mean, again, these guys lie left and right. So there is growing discontent at home, but it's kind of the discontent you'd see in a normal country if you were in a war that wasn't going well. So anyway, that's my only thing. I'm not convinced. That's the thing. Yeah, Elle is saying the same thing. I don't think Russia's having an uprising. They're too mellow. That's sort of my thought too. I don't know how you guys got that little triangle with the 13 with the numbers in it. Elle, I'm just curious what that thing is next to your name on TikTok. That's really bizarre. I don't know. And Loyalty's got it too. I don't have any idea what that little thing is. I'll have to take a picture so I can see it. Oh, by giving gifts. Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's kind of neat. Oh, I like that. Sorry, there's a cute little thing on TikTok I kind of like that though. That's nice. That's nice. Actually, that is nice because it's frankly nice for me to see how generous you guys have been. So I don't disagree with that. That's kind of a cool thing. No, it's a new thing. TikTok is constantly rolling. It's boring for you guys. Just bear with me on the YouTubes. TikTok is constantly rolling out new features, and a lot of them are beta tested. I seem to get a lot of the beta tests, probably because I've got a bigger account, but maybe it's just random. And then they go away because they're still testing them. So that may go away, but that's actually kind of cool. I like that. I do like that because it kind of lets me see. I mean, I appreciate all of you equally. Thank you, Benji. So I'm certainly, if you guys can't afford to give a gift, it's okay. But like Victoria giving 18 is especially generous. I can at least see that, which isn't such a bad thing. Or Mark. Okay, I'll stop calling people out because then I'm going to be rude by not calling everybody out. But thank you guys. That's really nice. What else we got here? I heard Stalin got people drunk to get his advisors to tell him secrets and loosen their lips. Oh God, could you imagine? Um, yeah, people protesting in Russia are sentenced to 15 years in jail. Oh, I know that. Yeah. I didn't, Abdul. Well, there's a couple issues here, Abdul. One, I wasn't criticizing, but I was saying that Russia was not having an uprising. People were saying the question was, is Russia having the same kind of uprising they're having in Iran? They're not. I am not fully sympathetic to, you know, if you live in an authoritarian government, look at Iran. In Iran, you can get into a lot of trouble what these people are doing. They're doing it anyway. People are getting killed. They're protesting anyway. Women, especially, are putting their lives on the line in Iran, where you can go to jail for probably life or be killed. And we know you can be killed because that's the whole reason they're protesting. So I'm going to disagree with you on this one, Abdul, because look at what's going on in Iran. I'm not going to defend the Russians for being too afraid to protest because it's illegal. At some point, you know, as my, thank you, Wei Ray Cray, for that, as my Greek aunt said to me years ago, who was in her own right a very big women's activist, my Aunt Aga in Greece, married to my uncle who was the defense minister and lots of other cool jobs in Greece. And she said to me, you know, she basically talked about self-respect. And she was talking to me about, she was actually talking to me about Hillary Clinton. And she never liked Hillary. And we had an argument about this. And she didn't like that Hillary stayed with Bill. And I remember telling her at the time, and we were swimming actually, and she was like 93 at the time. And I said, you know, but you got to understand what Hillary went through. Thank you, Blue Sky, for the crown, by the way. I said, you understand what Hillary went through? You know, she got this guy into power basically, and then he just screwed her. If she left the relationship, she would have lost the possibility for him to finally help her get her, you know, her senatorial, her presidency, etc. And she turned to me and she said, your self-respect is worth more than a job. And it's something that stuck with me to this day because I didn't keep that in mind when I worked at the United Nations. The worst job I ever had in my entire life, and I've been working jobs for 35 years. I worked for a horrific human being who was a bully, who I can't even tell you, discrimination. I mean, horrific, this woman. And I didn't sort of stand by my self-respect. But in terms of politics, I absolutely believe in self-respect. And I have always been somebody who errs on the side of kind of speaking out, even if it's not safe. And that's me, because I feel like it's too important, you know? So yeah, I don't want to get into this whole thing, but I'm actually, again, curious what the rest of you think on the Russian thing. I'm, you know, the final point is too, it's not like the Russians are living in a dictatorship, but it's not like they're living in a dictatorship where it's like, oh, we hate our government. If only we could overthrow our government, we would, right? We just want to be a free democracy. We want to join Europe and be normal and not invade our neighbors, right? I mean, we don't want to oppress Black people and gay people. I mean, and Jews. It's not like that's what the Russian people believe. And, oh, but that evil government just keeps doing things the Russian people don't like. The Russian people love that he invaded Ukraine, right? I mean, they're not very happy about it now because it's not going well. But I don't buy it. I just don't buy that the Russian people are innocent. And I buy it less and less each day that the Russian people are innocent. As I think, Harvey, you might have even said this too. I don't remember if you're there today, Harvey, but we were talking about, what was this with Russia and, oh yeah, you know, you go back in Russian history, they've never had a good government. I mean, they've never had one. After a couple hundred years of like autocracy and authoritarianism, you kind of wonder whether it's not what the people want. You know, I worry that there's an authoritarian streak in sort of Russian history and in the Russian mindset, and that they've got the government they want to have, you know? But who knows? No, I would not. Moonby Like is saying you can't say that about every single one of them. No, I think 2-year-old Russian babies are totally innocent. I mean, for example, no, I wouldn't say about everybody, but you know, I ain't convinced that they're all innocent either. It seems like Abdul is saying it seems like the domestic agenda may become international in form of a Russian hit list. I'm not sure what you mean though. Whose domestic agenda becoming international, and which? What do you mean by a Russian hit list? Anyway, tell me more. I'm just not sure what you mean by that. Beep, 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 beep. Is Harvey there? I thought I saw Harvey scroll. Harvey is there. Okay, I thought I saw Harvey scroll by. I knew I saw Harvey. Let me look for another question here. Hang on, guys. Remember, you can submit questions on TikTok via the Q&A link in my profile. You can submit it in the comment box at the bottom. Just to remind folks, I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my daily show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where I go through the news of the last 24 hours from Ukraine, and then we talk about it. Take your questions, your comments, your thoughts, and we're at the part of the show now, where we're taking your questions. So on TikTok, as I said, go to the Q&A link in my profile. You can submit them here on the screen. The only problem is they go by kind of fast. So there's always a chance of me not seeing it, right? So that's the only thing. Same thing with you guys there. And please do keep the gifts coming, because I am doing this for free and it helps me out. And I very much appreciate it. So when you guys do the gifts on TikTok or the gifts on YouTube, they do help my work. Basically, you help me pay the bills and you help me keep doing this work, because ain't nobody paying me except you guys. So I appreciate it. Do we have any updates on the investigations into potential human rights violations by the Ukrainian militia? No. Zero on that. Thank you, Dan, for that. There were the UN looked into it, because initially there was an allegation, and there was video, I think, but who knows if it's true, right? Thank you, Susie, of the Ukrainian troops possibly shooting 2 Russian soldiers that they had captured, which would be a war crime. And the UN investigated, I think, all of it. Sorry, my back is itching. All of it, and said that the overwhelming majority of the war crimes have been Russian, because they investigated, but there were a few, and they named that one of the 2. We do not know about, remember there was the thing about a month ago that nobody knows really what happened. There was video, but the video didn't really show much. And the video showed, mind you, the video purported to show, we don't know if this was real, if it was acting or what, purported to show Ukrainian troops, Russian troops coming out of a building, Russians with their hands up or whatever, and the Ukrainian soldiers saying, get down on the ground. So the Russians all get down on the ground, lay flat, right? You're surrendering, you lay with your hands on your head. And one Russian comes out of the building with his gun firing, and the Ukrainians scream, and the camera drops and the camera turns off. Then it's continued with drone footage from above, different camera angle, right? Because one was the Ukrainian guy filming it, supposedly, and the other was the drone, and you see a bunch of dead bodies on the ground, and they're within a couple meters of where they were when they laid down. Couple meters meaning 6 feet, maybe 9 feet. And my concern, and the concern from all the news reports at the time, was we don't know if the video is real. We don't know if it's staged, if it's a Russian staged video. We don't know what happened after. Let's pretend it's real. The guy coming out guns blazing was a war crime. If you all surrender and then you open fire after you've surrendered, it's actually a war crime. If it's real and this guy opened fire, then the Ukrainians would have opened fire at the same time. So a lot of guys could have gotten killed. While this guy opens fire, what if the Russian guys on the ground stood up and charged the Ukrainians? If I were the Russians, right, I could imagine, if you're about to be captured, even though it's a war crime to pretend to surrender, you surrender and you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're all going to come out. We're going to surrender. We're going to lie on the ground, and we're going to make sure we lie on the ground in different, right? You're over there. I'm over there. He's over there, right? So we're spread out to really spread ourselves apart. So if the Ukrainians have to fire, they've got to, it's all over the place. And the last guy comes out guns blazing, so that as soon as he does that, all of us stand up and we attack the Ukrainians. What do the Ukrainians do? The Ukrainians open fire to stop them. Conveniently, there's no camera for that part. So we don't know what happened. Anyway, we don't know what happened. But there's been no further reports on whether it was real, whether it was fake or whatever. Partially, it's going to be very hard to know because how would you, and this is what the Russians, I think, are counting on. If it is fake, how would you prove it's real? I mean, you could try to look at the video, but I don't know that they can prove it's real unless they can literally identify, the Ukrainian troops, the Russian troops, but we still don't know what happened, right? But at the point that the Russians were lying on the ground and the guy comes firing, assuming it's real, the camera stopped. So did the Russian troops get off the ground and attack? Who knows? So anyway, not clear. The apple crisp was horrific, not horrifically, amazingly to die for. One of the best things I've ever made, but we'll talk about that later. Harvey, there you are. Thoughts on Lavrov, who is the Russian foreign minister, commenting on the Kurdish breakaway province inside Syria, claiming it to be a terrorist state akin to ISIS. Ooh, why is he doing this? Trying to undermine the Brittany Griner news? I mean, if I were Lavrov, it sounds like he's trying to cause trouble with Turkey, right? Yes, the flag department, exactly. We don't like to throw foreign flags at me. Thank you, Harvey. If I were Lavrov, talking about the Kurds and saying that a Kurdish breakaway province inside Syria, which clearly the Turks would see as a threat, long story here, but there's a Kurdish minority that the Turks have been oppressing. The Syrians oppress them. The Iraqis had been oppressing them, the Kurdistan or whatever. But I mean, the whole area covers a number of different countries, the Turks in particular. And if it to me, it sounds like Lavrov is trying to stir the pot to get Turkey upset and force potentially an American response for us to say something, right? Now, think about this too. We are waiting for Turkey and they're still negotiating to approve Finland and Sweden joining NATO, right? We're waiting for Hungary and we're waiting for Turkey. They're the last two that have to approve Finland and Sweden joining NATO. The Hungarians have already said that they're going to vote at the beginning of the year and it's a done deal. No problem. The Turks, not so much. And Sweden just returned a couple days ago a Kurd who was in their custody that, was allegedly a terrorist or whatever. And they just sent him back to Turkey. So that was clearly part of the deal that the Turks are negotiating. So I don't know. That sounds awfully fishy to me. Now, the other issue is, and somebody else is going to have to help me on here, I read something in the last couple days about the U.S. protesting to Turkey because Turkey, I believe, is firing into the Kurdish region in Syria. And the U.S. said that Turkey was putting American troops at risk by doing that because our troops were in the area. So that's another reason right there why the Russians would have. I am 99% sure I've got the story right. It's funny. I read it and I just it wasn't relevant for the Ukraine update, so I ignored it. But that would explain why Russia is weighing in, because Russia is basically siding with Turkey, right? And trying to create a schism between the U.S. and Turkey. So that's what's going on. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it, but I think it's true. Thank you, Hazel. That is one of my faves. Thank you for that. Meteor shower. There was not a question to you, Marion. I don't think so. Was there a question to me? Marion, you're okay. Nobody had questions for you. No, I don't know. I did not have a question, but somebody else may have. Actually, I do have a quick question for Marion. We're almost done here anyway. We're at the hour. At the top of the hour, I like to sign off. Thank you, swell fella, for the hat. Marion, I'd asked you about this before, and I don't know if you can write something quickly in the comments, but several times when we're trying to figure out Russian behavior, I remember you telling me the story about how when you were working for USAA or whatever it was, Marion was doing there's no secret here, was working for the U.S. government when she was in grad school with me and doing a really cool project. Thank you, Uncle Crazy Bone, for that. Was doing a really cool project traveling around Russia with like a U.S. trade show, U.S. government trade show in essence. And the Russians, they were warned that the Russians were going to come to them, and it was set up by the Russian government, the KGB, whatever. But you said something about them throwing crazy questions at you. And I remember one of them was like the moon. And does the moon look the same in America that it does in Russia? And I asked you like, what was even the point of that? And I thought you said something like they were just trying to throw you. But what was that? Only because I think it's potentially relevant to. I was thinking of it the other day with all of these crazy packages being sent to Ukrainian embassies abroad with animal parts and things, and it reminded me of what you told me about just this concept of they're just like they just like to mess with your head. But anyway, I'm going to look and see if there's another question while we're waiting because I'm curious about that. Um, yeah, I will. And as somebody on TikTok goes, meanwhile, Americans are arguing with Americans about whether or not the sky is blue. Very true. Okay, sorry. Marion's weighing in here. I'll put, yes, USIA, exhibit service, KGB provocateurs. How many moons do you have? Just to disconnect the conversation. Interesting. So was it like trying to throw you from your talking points in essence, or you know what I mean? Like I guess it was just trying to be so bizarre that you'd be like, "What?" You know what it reminds me too? It reminds me of people who will throw kind of nasty, weird questions on TikTok, and I've said this before, and it's pretty much guaranteed to be a troll. Like somebody the other day, literally out of the blue, goes, "You lick your lips a lot." And I saw it because I've actually had chapped lips lately, and I saw it, and I called out on it because it reminded me of what you said of being like something out of the blue just to throw you and confuse you a little. Yes, and our talking point was a home computer. What do you mean? You lost me that. I'm not sure what you mean by that. You've heard dumber things from Americans. No, this is true. Yeah, I think so. I think Rob Wall is saying he's seen a lot of stuff like that too. I think part of the troll, again, it's part of it is just to throw you and to confuse you. And especially, I will say, for a live broadcast, all the more so. But even for what Marion's doing, you're trying to be on message, or what she was not doing now, she was doing. You're trying to be on message. You're at in visiting a hostile country. Back then it was the Soviet Union, and somebody raises their hand or whatever and asks a question that's so out of left field, you go, what? And you lose your train of thought, and it throws you. And potentially now you're thrown for the next 10 minutes because well, actually, even better, it throws you, and the person has basically, because Marion had the briefing, the person basically just said, "Hi, Marion, I'm KGB and I'm here to bother you." So already in her mind, she goes KGB. And what does that do? It throws you a little bit as well, right? Because now you know KGB guy is talking to you. Yeah, that's cute. Thank you, JSM. That's very funny. I almost answered you and was going to say I'm Greek, but that's very funny. That was good. You got to be. Somebody just wrote on TikTok and goes, "You talk with your fingers a lot." Now, the risk of writing something like that is the moderators could get confused and block you. We've had people put jokes before on TikTok, and I don't blame the moderators because I fell for one of them too, and I totally thought the guy was being serious and it was a joke. Oh, interesting. So just that we were demonstrating. Oh, you were demonstrating home computers at the exhibit. Oh, that's very interesting. Actually, in 1987, that's very interesting because that was still pretty early. I mean, I didn't have a home computer back then. No, it's okay, JSM. That was very funny. That's really interesting. Oh, wow. So the USIA had trained us how to deal with provocateurs. Oh, wow. Well, I told you, Marion, I want to get you on here at some point. I think you'd be a fun guest, just talking about Russia and the mentality and even stories. Oh, hell, we can talk about our stories about Russia when we were there. I've got my stories. Whew, I was in the Soviet Union a couple of years before. Shut up, Big Hawk. I was there a couple of years before Marion in 1984, February of 84, excuse me, only for about 10 days. But it was the middle of the Cold War. 1984, Reagan. And I always say, I forget because it was the middle guy, either Khrushchev, Brezhnev had just died, and I think Andropov had just died, or Chernenko. I don't remember which, but I think the two of them, my trip had already been booked, and the two of them had already died. And I was going over, so it was a really wild time to sort of be in Russia. Your first was 82. I knew you were going to, as soon as I said that, I knew you were going to say I was there earlier. Marion was there in 82, so just as creepy of a time as I was. but it was very interesting. Yep, Andropov. Yep. So Andropov was the other one, and then what? And then did Chernenko live? I think Chernenko lived because they had the three, but didn't he live like a year or something crazy? Because it was, I just remember, I want to think three of them. Didn't three of them die? But not in the same. I mean, three. They had three the same month or so. Thank you, call name. Appreciate that. Um, just wondering if anybody remembers. 1991, Linda went or Lindy. Um, just looking here. I was non-existent until '86. It's okay. um, but yeah, Soviet Union was fascinating. It really was. And Russia. Marion and I went to the Russian Far East in 1993. And it was right after Kamchatka had opened up. And we were the first, I think we were the second, um, we were the second American delegation since Kamchatka had opened up. We're in Petropavlovsk, but it was the second delegation since it had opened and become a open, no longer communist. But it was fascinating, and there were still all the statues of Lenin and everything. Oh my God, we had a wild time, but it was. But like I said, we'll have to share Russia stories just because I think it was really interesting at some point. Not exist until 2000. Yes, I know you're a baby, Harvey. That's okay. As Ronald Reagan said, I won't hold your youthful inexperience against you. Um, the first flight KAL 07. Yeah. Now wait, when was 07? When was that? When was KAL 00 or 007? What year was that? That was earlier. Was it 82? Was it 82? When was that? I'm trying to remember here. Chernenko died in March of 85. So that's what I was going to say. And wasn't that like a year later that Chernenko died? So he still didn't do well. And then it was Gorbachev. But I want to say it was Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko, and then Gorbachev is my guess. 92? No, 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 no. The KAL. No, the KAL plane was shot down during Reagan. That was the beginning of the Reagan era. 007 or whatever. Yeah. That would have been early 1980s. No, it wasn't 1989. It was way early. 83. There you go. 1983. That makes sense. Yeah. September 1st, 1983. Yeah, because it was early on, pre-Gorbachev, and that was boy, that was oof. I remember that. I remember watching the UN, the UN Security Council when the Russians were lying about the whole thing, and we pulled up the video, and they had the video and then the audio of the Russian pilots. Woo! We went to Kamchatka. I thought it was 93. It could have been 92. It could have been 92. I don't remember which year. I'd have to. I don't know that I've got it anywhere. 92 or 93. Yeah, yeah. Your kids are so much older. We're all so much older than Harvey, Greg. um, but anyway, ooh la la. All right. Well, all right. I don't want to relive Kamchatka sentence by sentence, but I do want to get you here, Marion, one of these days because I think you'd be a fun guest. And we don't even have to talk about everybody. We could just talk about Russia in general. You lived in Russia in 1993. Oh, 92. If you were there in 93, then it was 92. Okay. Yeah, that was just so bizarre. Anyway, all right. I'll do a quick recap. Folks like the quick little recap where basically I just list the stories we talked about, and then I will call it quits and go in the other room and have some dinner. All right. Oh, Putin quote. There from Rob. There is a lot of noise right now about our strikes against the energy infrastructure of the neighboring country, Putin said. Well, right. And then he said, muted. How did I mute? Somehow the mute button got hit. I have no idea how. That makes no sense at all. Wow. It got muted somehow on TikTok. On YouTube. Wow. Okay. I unmuted it. Okay. I unplugged my mic though, so it's not going to be as good a connection. But Marion, that's what we were asking. We were saying, sorry, real quick, folks, but we were talking about that Putin seemed to admit that they were hitting civilian infrastructure and said, yeah, but we're doing it because the Ukrainians hit the Kerch Bridge. And Elise said, you assume Putin approved of all of this, but Putin's literally admitting publicly that he, in essence, is targeting Ukrainian infrastructure. He's giving a justification for why he's doing it. Is that not an admission of a war crime potentially? Because usually they say they don't have you can't prove that the guy on top ordered it. Just throwing it out there. Not that Marion's our war crime expert, but Marion's a good lawyer expert. Can't hear? Don't tell me you still can't hear. I know you guys can hear. You're okay. I'm going to hang up in a second anyway, though, because it's already 12 after. But oops. You have to watch the video. Exhibit A. Marion says it will be Exhibit A in the trial. No, but it's a really interesting question. Yeah. No, I'm with you, Elise. Okay, yeah, that's weird. Well, no, it wasn't the Twitch fault though. Like I said, it got muted. I don't know what that was about. That was weird. All right, guys, I'm gonna go. Join me tomorrow. I'm not gonna do a hangout tonight in the Discord, but do check out the Discord. There are a number of things, auction items that are coming up tomorrow, meaning the auction ends tomorrow, and then some more. Actually, I don't even know if it's 2 or 4 that end tomorrow. Maybe it's 2 that end tomorrow. The recap. All right, I'll do a quick recap. I know you guys like your recap. Real quick. Brittany Griner was released. United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia helped. CNN's Nick Payton Walsh says that actually the deal shows some good things, including the fact that the U.S. and Russia can still work together, even though we're at war in essence, and that it showed weakness on Putin's part because Putin is desperate to get into the good graces of the country's elites, including the military and the intelligence services. There were reports of an explosion heard in Russian-occupied Sevastopol in southern Ukraine, which means hopefully the Ukrainians hit something else. The U.S. has not seen evidence that Iran has transferred ballistic missiles to Russia yet, so that's good. The Ukrainian state weapons manufacturer said a little bit ago, but I was sort of filling you guys in, that they are almost done creating a new drone that can go 600 miles or nearly 1,000 kilometers. Ukraine struck 2 Russian bases, as you know, a few days ago, Russian air bases, and it looks like, this is another report out today on how they did it, it looks like the Ukrainians modified a Soviet drone, which is what people were thinking, a Soviet drone that they've had for over 30 years, and they modified it, I guess, for distance, but also it was simply a surveillance drone just to take pictures and things. They modified it to add a bomb in the front of it, and obviously it damaged 2 Russian nuclear bombers, which is a big deal, and killed 3 Russian troops, which is also a big deal. Russia has reportedly put Grad rocket launchers next to the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, because that's what they do. Russian state TV is very upset that Vladimir Zelensky got the Time Person of the Year award. The Slovak Minister of Foreign Affairs, which was very interesting, basically came out and said everybody who's pushing for negotiations for Ukraine and Russia, but meaning Ukraine just has to give in and give Russia something, and if they give away their land, too bad. He went off about Hitler and Czechoslovakia. I mean, really amazing, and the comparisons there. So that was pretty wild. And finally, a Turkish company is reportedly going to supply Ukraine with electricity via Romania and Moldova. Don't know how much, but still very cool, and very cool of the Turks to be doing it. So, and the Romanians and the Moldovans as well. Well, the Moldovans. No love lost between Moldova and Russia, that's for sure. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Thank you for joining me. Do check out, like I said, on the Discord. You can check out the auction. And voila, there you go. Discord.aravosis.com. You can go to erevosis.com in general, and it'll give you all of my links for the Patreon, everything else. Check it out. Check out my store. Thanks for joining, and thank you, moderators, as always. I did not see if we had a lot of crazy folks. I know we always do, so I'm just going to assume we did. All right, guys. Thank you all, moderators, on you guys as well. I know we don't get the crazies anymore at all on TikTok, on YouTube, which is good, and we occasionally get them on Twitch as well. Thank you, Ellie, for that. All right, see you guys.